It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Uruguay's players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and today we'll be looking at Uruguay's squad for the 2022 World Cup. Short version, please. For the forwards. So let's move on to the last section of the podcast, which is some kind of notes, some discussion of the squad. Is what we start with. No, we start with my shirt. Okay, I'll admit I had a bit of trouble finding a shirt for this one. The only shirt I have with the sky blue in it is Argentina, and I'm sure I would get angry comments from listeners if I presented Uruguay with Argentina's shirt on. So I went for the neutral white. I'm going to claim that this is a replica of Uruguay's away shirt in the 1936 Copa America. Well, okay, I'm just making that up. I have no idea. The truth is I don't have anything that was suitable for Argentina, so I just went with white, hoping that people would buy it as an away uniform in a distant cup. Sorry, Uruguay, I will work on that. Okay, let's look at some notes. We'll kind of return to the notes we started with above. And we did note that Uruguay punches well above their weight, a country of just 3.5 million people, which is very small. And yet they have 2 World Cups under their belt. They've done well in World Cups and are tied with Argentina for the most regional cups, the most Copa Americas. We won't go through all that detail again. We also noted that Uruguay's success kind of undulates many times, coming back to good finishes in World Cup and in regional cup play, but also suffering some troughs. Undulating Uruguay is how I've titled that. But we'll focus more now here on the more player-related issues. And the one that I've mentioned several times throughout the player-by-player podcast is aging stars. So, Edinson Cavani, Luis Suarez, defender Godin, goalkeeper Muslera, Martin Cáceres, all of these players have been big players for Uruguay, but all of them well into their 30s now, and a bit of a question as to whether the new manager should use them or kind of seek out younger players. And they have done a good job bringing in younger players, but no one of the status of these players. So hopefully Uruguay will hope they have one more cup in terms of good performances for them, but a bit worrying as their performance and club affiliations have kind of dropped off as they reach their mid-30s. So this is a passing generation for Uruguay, and perhaps best represented by the longtime manager Oscar Tabarez, having been replaced in 2021. And so as I said before, he was the guiding them through qualification here, but a loss to Bolivia after 8 games saw them in 7th place. So that was alarming. So they let him go and replaced him with Diego Alonso, who we met in the player-by-player. I won't give the details on him, but I don't think I did mention this before. He won the last 3 games, so he led them to victory in the last 3 games and a 3rd place finish, automatic qualification in that group. So a really good start for Diego Alonso. We kept a close eye on the changes that he made as we went through the player-by-player analysis in the full version of the podcast, and he's done quite well at injecting some youth into the squad, something they're definitely going to need after this tournament. But he still seems quite reliant on the veterans. Again, Luis Suarez still their highest scorer in qualifying, and Darwin Núñez actually not used that much I'm sure he'll come to greater prominence, especially if Cavani and Suarez retire after this. But he has done well bringing some youth into the club, but not really using them ahead of the veterans, because the veterans still have some good play left in them. So a bit of a quandary for the manager as to which way to go with that. Let's talk about club affiliations for Uruguay. And we saw that some of the biggest players have moved back. So Luis Suarez now back with Nacional in Uruguay, but he did play for Barcelona and Atletico Madrid and Liverpool, so some big club affiliations. Ronald Araujo plays for Barcelona in Mexico, and Jose Jimenez is still with Atletico Madrid. Diego Godin, his partner at Atletico Madrid, has now moved on. I'm just trying to figure out where. Yeah, he's playing in Argentina now. Federico Valverde with Real Madrid, so a lot of these Spanish clubs. And we also have a couple of players with fairly big Turkish clubs. So Galatasaray, I think Muslera is still with Galatasaray, and Lucas Torreira has recently moved there from Arsenal in England. Really just one player from Uruguay. No, we have a couple in England too, sorry. Rodrigo Bentancur with Tottenham. Pellistri with Manchester United, but hasn't really been used as a starter for Manchester United, just kind of with them in training, as it were. And Darwin Núñez with Liverpool making a splash there. And a couple of big clubs in Brazil too, Flamengo and two players with Flamengo. And I know during the play-by-play podcast, I mentioned a few Brazilian clubs. So fairly good pedigree for Uruguay, but that's only about half the players. The other half of the players play for smaller teams, maybe LA Galaxy in USA, and teams like Getafe in Spain, and Cagliari in Italy. So I would say about maybe 2/3 of the players playing with the biggest clubs there. So Uruguay again doing very well as a small country. Let's move on to age and experience, or some statistics too. So I've been running these statistics. I'm going to try to improve them over time, but so far kind of interesting. So we look at the total number of players on the slate for Uruguay, and it is 54, but I must admit we've included some players who were kind of called up to preliminary squads but didn't even make the bench. So 54 is a large number of players on the plate. 49 is the average, but I would say overall Uruguay is about average. So still have a fairly good pool of players to draw from. Even after some of their veterans retire, which will probably be after the World Cup, they usually seem to find good talent despite the small size of the country. Total players under consideration is 32, so that's definite, likely, and possible players. So again, a good number of players to draw from there. And total players in definite or likely categories, 24. So I would say the team is mostly decided. They have a few decisions to make. We can roughly say that they have to fill 2 positions from the 32 players. So 32 minus 24, 2 positions from those 8 players. Although there will probably be a couple of injuries and a couple of players in good form which make it into the final picture. So not much of a selection problem for Uruguay. In terms of the demographics of the team, the average age is 27.6. So that is on the old side, although we do find a lot of teams in this World Cup are around 27. So they're not really among the oldest teams. We have Belgium at 28.5, Japan at 28.1. And I think they would be third here although South Korea and Brazil are also at 27.6. But yeah, a fairly mature squad. That's going to go down a lot after the World Cup when some of their oldest players retire. And I will tell you how many there are. So we have 5 players, and 5 of their biggest players too, at 35 or older. So that's Cavani, Suarez, Cáceres, Godin, and Muslera, all 35 or 36 years old. And then we have 8 players who are 30 or older. And then we have 5 players who are 23 or younger. Yeah, so we're going to see probably, I wouldn't be surprised if all 5 of those players who are 35 or older retiring after the Cup, which will bring down their average age. But as we've said, it looks like they have been doing fairly well bringing youth into the squad. Well, that age gives them a great maturity in terms of experience. And we know that Uruguay's players have been very steady, so not a lot of players coming in and out. So those players have been playing a lot of their games. So the average caps is 43.5, and I do think that may be the most experienced team in terms of caps. The average is 30.2, so they are far above average. And the only ones close to them is Portugal at 40.2. They have an average of 43.5 caps per player. So by far the most experienced team in terms of national caps in the World Cup here. In terms of goals, they have a total of 172 goals among the players here. That stat doesn't mean that much in itself. But we've been 172 goals. We've kind of reduced this to the total number of goals per cap and comparing teams on that basis. And they are at 14.1%. The average is 13.1%. So they tend to score more than other teams. But if we analyze that a bit more closely, we see that their scorers are actually quite limited. So we have Luis Suarez and Cavani with tremendous scoring ratios. Luis Suarez at 51.5% and Edinson Cavani at 43.6%. But there's a really steep drop off after that. And the next closest one is I won't count Diego Rossi. He has 1 goal in 3 games, but we're going to limit this to players who have played more than 20 games. Giorgio Di Arrascaeta at 21%. So that is 20% below Cavani. And then nobody else is above 20%. So even Darwin Nunez, he has 2 goals in 11 games for them, so hasn't really established himself. Maxi Gomez, the other forward, at 15%. So it just really does show how reliant they are on Suarez and Cavani, and you can understand why the manager would be very reluctant to suddenly go with different forwards, given that no one has emerged as even close to the scorers that Suarez and Cavani are. So very interesting to see what will happen in the Cup. We'll go over some of the issues here. So in defense, on the goalkeeper front, we have Rocher over Muslera. So long-time starter Muslera seems to be now a backup keeper behind Sergio Rocher. The new manager seemingly installing Rocher as the starter, although Muslera did come back for 1 game, suggesting that he is the second string backup keeper. In terms of formation, we have a 4-man defense, so they did flirt a little bit with a 3-man defense in a friendly, and I think a 5-man defense in one of the World Cup qualifying games. But it seems like a 4-man defense is what both managers have preferred. In terms of the central defenders in that, we have the long-time pairing of Godin and Jimenez. Even they're a pairing They were a pairing at Atletico Madrid for a long time, so very familiar with playing to each other, kind of like Suarez and Cavani up front. It seems like it would be dangerous to switch over at this point to a new pairing, although Araujo and Coates did start in the last friendly. I think that was kind of experimental, maybe giving some field time to the backup players there. But the new manager seemingly going with Godin and Jimenez. But it was a little bit of doubt was thrown in with the manager using different players in the cup. And again, the last game with Coates and Araujo, it may be a reflected image of the future after the World Cup. But if they're thinking of changing it from Godin and Jimenez, it seems a bit late in the process to make such a bold move. As far as left defender goes, we have Matthias Vina kind of holding the position for a long time, but recently a bit of change, and Oliveira seems to have emerged as a starting left defender, although Vina did come back, so it could be that he's the backup, but it doesn't seem like Vina will be the starter under the new manager. The right back, though, is far more undecided. And in fact, the manager used central defender Araujo in the 4 remaining World Cup games, which seems to have worked since they won those games. But in the friendlies, the 3 friendlies, it was a different player in each. So a bit uncertain as to what they'll do there. In the midfield, we have a wide variety of formations, so that seems pretty undecided. However, the players populating that midfield seem to be the same 5 players. So even though the formations change quite a bit, the central midfield is a steady group of players, even though they do kind of shift around among themselves. The left wing is unclear under new manager Alonso. We've had mostly De La Cruz under Tabarez, but a wide variety of players, many of them playing out of position under Alonso. So it seems a kind of an undecided position there. And finally, Palestri on the right side seems to be a clear decision by the new manager. It was unsettled under Tabarez, but Alonso has been fairly consistent in using Palestri as the right winger, and I believe, or I'm certain actually, that he played as a right forward one time when they had a 3-man forward line. Perhaps the biggest concern is what to do with the attack. So I've mentioned it. In terms of formation, they've toyed with 1, 2, or 3 man forward lines, and that's changed recently. I think they used 1 of each in the 3 friendlies, but more concerningly, the players have changed recently. So Suarez and Cavani didn't play as much, as many games during this period, and at times kind of seem to be off the team for a short time. So does the manager go with those veterans who are definitely aging and not in the form that they used to be, or do they bring in new players? At this point, Darwin Núñez is a consideration, but I think it would be kind of unwise to change, because Núñez and the other forwards don't score, don't have anything near the records of Suarez and Cavani. And so kind of seems to be struggling with what to do. And the last point is similar. Really, one of the key issues of the World Cup for Uruguay is, do Cavani and Suarez still have it? We'll have to find out in the Cup. Again, both of them suffer periods of non-starts. We have Alvarez, Núñez, and Maxi Gomez all coming in as starters, but none of them really matching the records Cavani and Suarez. So, but then Suarez and Cavani not as reliable as they used to be. So I think I'm getting a bit repetitive there. I apologize, but yeah, for me that's really one of the issues of the cup. Okay, let's take a look at new players. And so obviously we have Diego Alonso, the manager, who came in December. He came in, replacing 15-year manager Oscar Tabarez. But credit to him, he's done quite well, both in rejuvenating the squad and in ensuring their qualification for this cup. So props to him. Matthias Oliveira is a left defender. He's new to the squad, 25 years old, but hasn't been in a tournament before, and he plays for Napoli in Italy. And we have Damian Suarez, a right defender. He actually is 36 years old, 34 years old, but an interesting story in that he came back to the team after a 12-year absence and even kind of inserted himself in the team to the point of becoming a likely candidate. So new in the sense that he hasn't participated in a tournament before, but 34 years old, so not youthful. Manuel Ugarte, he recently, or in 2021, made a move to Sporting Lisbon in Portugal, kind of upping his club affiliation pedigree, and just 21 years old there, and a defensive midfielder. So looks like he could make his way into the squad, although that central midfield has a lot of good players, so not easy to break into. I'm just going to put one player who is at the possible level, and that's left winger Diego Rossi. So he has 4 caps since 2022 and is 24 years old. And he recently moved to Fenerbahce in Turkey. That was a step up from Los Angeles FC in USA. So perhaps that will raise his profile with the club. Facundo Pellistri, as we saw, seems to be a favorite of Diego Alonso, and has been installed as a right winger or perhaps even a right forward. He's with Manchester United in England, but if he has played any games with them, it's very few. That is good pedigree, though, and the 21-year-old has a bright future ahead of him, perhaps even in this cup. And finally, we have a definite candidate, Darwin Nunez. He hasn't played as much for Uruguay as some might think, just 13 caps since 2019, and he hasn't scored the way they hope he would, just 3 goals in those 13 caps. He's 23 years old. His recent move to Liverpool in 2022 from Benfica in Portugal, both of those big clubs, and has given him a bigger profile. He wasn't part of the 2021 Copa America, so it kind of does show how new to Uruguay he really is, or how his profile has suddenly been raised, but it hasn't really shown in his Uruguay stuff yet. Okay, we move on to injuries, and actually Uruguay are looking quite good. We did have a couple of injury scares kind of in June, and I'll start with kind of go in order of importance of the injury. We had Nicolas Lopez. He's only a possible but unlikely candidate, but he was injured for he was injured for the June games, but back in action with his club by July. So not a concern there. We also had central defender Sebastian Coates, so he is a likely candidate. He was out with he was out 2 separate times with a knee injury during the period from the 2021 Copa America to June of this year, 2022. But he seems to have recovered from that and has been playing with his club. And then worryingly, Darwin Nunez was out for the last match in June 2022. out with just a knock, actually, and he was playing for his club in August, so it doesn't seem to be a concern there. And finally, Rodrigo Bentancur, a very similar situation. He was out with a back problem, so a bit more of a concern in terms of the type of injury, out with the back problem for the June games, but back with his new club in August, both Bentancur and Nunez joining English clubs there and back in action in August. So, so far so good for Uruguay, but we'll update any injuries that come in the update podcast. So those will be injuries closer to the Cup. Notable absences, well, Oscar Tabarez, the 15-year manager, notably absent. We talked about him above, so won't repeat it here, but a big change for them. Martin Campagna is one of two goalkeepers who, steady backup keepers for the Uruguay national team through several tournaments, but never actually saw any action. So Martin Campagna was a backup keeper from the 2016 Copa Centenario, in the 2018 World Cup, and 2019 and 2021 Copa Americas. Couldn't get past Fernando Muslera, who was a starting keeper, so didn't see any action in those tournaments, but now out of the picture. And similarly, Martin Silva, in the same boat. So he was with the team way back for the 2010 World Cup and called up for every tournament since then, except for the 2021 Copa America. So 2019 Copa America, his last tournament, I think he got in one game in the 2013 Confederations Cup. Otherwise was just on the bench the whole time, but a steady backup keeper, now no longer on the team. Nicolas Lodera played with Uruguay from 2009 to 2019, earned 60 caps and 5 goals in that time, and never really kind of made it onto the team as a starter. And he missed the 2018 World Cup there, didn't make the final cut, but he was on the Copa America 2019 team. Anyway, kind of a familiar name for Uruguay fans, and Americans will know him as being with the Seattle Sounders for since 2016, but hasn't been selected for the national team since 2000. Christian Stuani with the team from 2012 to 2019, 50 caps and 8 goals. Still playing club soccer, but last played in the 2019 Copa America, and again struggled to get into the squad as a starter, so mostly as a substitute, but in many tournaments from the World Cup 2014 to the 2019 Copa America. Christian Rodriguez, Uruguay is losing their Christians. He was with the team from 2003 to 2018, 110 caps and 11 goals. 37 years old now, still playing club soccer in Uruguay, and with the team since the 2004 Copa America, believe it or not, all the way to the 2018 World Cup, but that was his last tournament. Maxi Pereira also, the World Cup was his last tournament. He was with the team from 2005 to 18, 125 caps, still playing club soccer also in Uruguay. And he was kind of a starter in his early years, the 2010 World Cup and the 2011 Copa America, more of a substitute after that. Perhaps not. Started some games in the 2014 World Cup, was a substitute by the 2018 World Cup anyway, and a fearsome defensive player, Maxi Pereira. So, yeah, a lot of those players were gone actually after the 2018 World Cup, and we're going to have a notable absences section at the next Copa America, because we expect some of their biggest names, Suarez, Cavani, Godin and Muslera, to retire after this World Cup. Okay, the last order of business is predicted starters. So I'll just go back and grab my list that we went through in the player-by-player podcast. And we've talked about Oscar Tabarez, no longer the manager after 15 years, and Diego Alonso coming in and getting off to a good start by qualifying them for the World Cup. And it is Diego Alonso who will take them through. For goalkeepers, we saw that Diego Alonso kind of inserted Sergio Roche ahead of Fernando Muslera. So we think Sergio Roche is now the starter and Fernando Muslera the backup keeper. And that is the goalkeeping situation. The most likely third keeper there is Sebastian Sosa as a possible candidate. For central defenders, we have three definite candidates in Diego Godin, Jose Maria Jimenez, and Ronaldo Araujo. Although Ronaldo Araujo played mostly as a right back in World Cup qualifying games, we have a likely candidate in Sebastian Coates. So we think all four of them will be there. But I think the manager would be silly not to go with Godin and Jimenez because it's a bit late to change it. Although Araujo and Coate did make inroads and actually started the last friendly in June as a pairing, I think it would be risky to make them the starting pair. However, I do think Araujo will get onto the field, perhaps as a right back or in something like a three-man defense, or maybe starting some games as a central defender, replacing Godin perhaps. As a left back, it kind of was Matias Vina under Tabarez, and Matthias Oliveira made good inroads under the new manager, and a bit hard to decide which of those it will be. So I'm going to put them in yellow. That's my hedging color. We also have Martin Cáceres, the veteran, as a likely candidate to make the squad, but probably not as a starter there. I suspect that the new manager might go with Oliveira, but Vina has a lot of experience, so we'll have to see. As a right back, it's difficult to say. As we said, the manager used Araujo as a right back, and we do have Damian Suarez as a likely candidate here, but really Guillermo Varela as a possible candidate, but a bit of a lack of candidates on this side. So it actually, I wouldn't be surprised to see one of the left backs, Vina or Oliveira, moved over, although the manager hasn't done that. So I would say Damian Suarez or possibly Araujo, but I'm not inclined to highlight Damian Suarez as a starter for the squad. So we're going to leave that one blank. For defensive midfielders, we have the young Manuel Ugarte as a likely candidate. And then for central midfielders, we really have a lot of candidates. Some of them we moved to left midfield and right midfielders during the discussion, but they are coded as central midfielders. I wonder if Manuel Ugarte is going to get a start with Sporting Lisbon. I wouldn't be surprised if the manager started him, but that's a tough group of veterans to break into for central midfielders, so I won't be brave enough to say Manuel Ugarte will be a starter. I wouldn't be surprised, though. Matthias Vecino, I think he'll be definite. For me, Lucas Torreira seems to be used more as a player to fill the gaps, and I don't think he's as likely a starter as some of the others. So I'm going to put him as a player who will start a couple of games, my yellow highlight, but not a full starter, because I think Rodrigo Bentancur, who we've moved to kind of a left midfielder, and Federico Valverde will both definitely be starting. So we have a lot of players here, though. Vecino and Torreira as definite central midfielders, and Arambari and Goriaran as likely central midfielders, not starters, those two, though. And then we have Bentancur as a definite kind of left central midfielder, and Valverde as a definite right central midfielder. We also have Nahitan Nandez as a possibility I wouldn't be surprised if he's brought to the cup, but I don't see him as a starter. Left winger, it was Nicolas de la Cruz as a left winger, even a left attacking midfielder under Tabarez, but he hasn't been as consistently chosen by the new manager. So I think this position is very much up in the air. We have possible candidates for Facundo Torres and Diego Rossi, and I really can't stake anyone as a starter over there. On the right side, though, we do have Facundo Pellistri, who the manager Alonso seems to favor quite a bit. So I do think he will be a starter on the right side. And for attacking midfielders, well, they don't always use the position of central attacking midfielder, but when they do use it, Georgian Diarra is the one chosen for the position, and I believe he's been used as a right forward. So I think he's going to be a starter, at least sometimes, but I'll put him in green as a starter here. And wow, the forwards is very tough to decide. So we have Luis Suarez and Darwin Nunez as definite candidates to make the cup, and Edinson Cavani as a likely candidate to make the cup. And I imagine some of the possible, or even possible but unlikely given the lack of forwards, will be selected for the squad. Maxi Gomez as a possible, and perhaps Agustin Alvarez will make the squad because they're going to need a couple of more forwards. And really, Suarez and Cavani haven't started as regularly as they did when they were at their height of power. However, I think I'm going to say all three will get some starts, and I doubt that among the three of them, they will choose the same starter all the time. Really, what I think is going to happen there is that they're going to try them out, see if Suarez and Cavani can bring, can bring some of that old form, that great form into the cup. But if they find that they've their age is kind of catching up with them, switch to other forwards like Darwin Nunez. I wouldn't be surprised actually if they try out a couple of forwards in September if they have them available to them, because this does seem a bit lacking in terms of candidates. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this podcast. Keep in mind, we're going to be doing an update probably in mid-November there, once the teams' squad lists are published and the final squad is decided upon. Meanwhile, please keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. Oh, I'll show the picture on the thing here on the screen for YouTube watchers. Keep an eye on Soccerphiles Canada, that's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end, and our website, soccerphiles.captivate.fm. And please check our show notes for links and information. There's links to previous podcast series and information about this podcast to help you navigate it. Meanwhile, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will enjoy the World Cup and listen to our next podcast. Bye-bye.